Is a four-year college degree worth the cost? Well, according to the Pew Research Center, more than half of the adults polled said no, it's not worth the price. 75% of adults polled say college is unaffordable. 86% of college graduates said, though, it was a good investment for them. PayPal co-founder Peter Thiel recently raised some eyebrows when he said we are now in a higher education bubble. And he himself is paying 20 talented kids $100,000 to drop out of school and start up their own company. Well, here with his take is Reddit co-founder Alexis Ohanian. Alexis, always good to talk to you.
Always good to be here.
You had a startup in your early 20s. Would you have taken Peter's offer?
Ooh, probably not. But part of that was actually because I wouldn't have had a startup had I not gone to UVA and met Steve Huffman across the hall from me freshman year.
So the networking value was there for you.
Yeah, and it was one of those things, actually. Had I not met Steve, I'd probably be an immigration lawyer or something like that today. So yeah, I'm not the target for Peter Thiel's money. But there are plenty of students out there who would really benefit from just sort of avoiding a lot of the college stuff and getting right into trying to create something. And those 2 years of experience will probably do them a lot more good. But there are a really, really small percentage of college applicants.
Well, Peter Thiel, of course, famously helped not only co-found PayPal, but he helped put a lot of money into Facebook in the very beginning.
Yes.
And so he perhaps is thinking of the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world that he's trying to recruit, not your everyday average college student.
Yeah, and the situation, unfortunately, is a tough one for the rest of us because you're sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't. There's still a really high value placed on having a college degree, but there's also a really high and growing cost on getting one. And so you either get a degree, go into a ton of debt, and then work a job that will guarantee you paying that off at some point, or you'll forsake the degree and then end up probably in a low-wage sector.
Right. Well, we were just running on the bottom of the screen the average debt load. The average tuition, it's like $24,000 right now. You end up with a tremendous amount of debt when you graduate. And in a job market as tight as this one, there are obvious constraints. But how different is the tech sector, that world? Because there isn't the same value put on the college degree, right?
Yeah.
It's not like walking into a business job or a legal job where you need one.
When we hire, the thing we're looking for is what you've done, what you've built, what you've made. And yes, it helps to know that you've gone and gotten, let's say, a CS degree at a particular university.
Computer science degree.
Yes, computer science degree. But that's not ultimately what seals it. If you can show that you can build something and that you can do something, well, that's really what we're interested in. And so it is this kind of, there is this sort of idealistic meritocracy that goes on there in the tech world. And ultimately, what's really cool about what's going on now is that if you have a great idea and you can actually build it, there's nothing stopping you from getting it online and really being the next Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, he got on that Forbes Richest Americans list in only a few years by just creating something and being able to get it online. And that's great for those who can do it, because now there are no barriers in the way that there used to be. If you had a great idea, you may have needed a factory or employees or just cost. Now those barriers are pretty much gone.
And as you said, it's easier to get money.
Yes, that's for sure. You need less of it, and when you need to get it, it's certainly out there.
Well, Thiel himself, we should say, he not only went to Stanford undergrad, he also got a law degree from Stanford. So he's not including himself in that pool. But his point was, to quote him, "No one pays $250,000 just to read Chaucer. The implicit promise is that you work hard to get there, you're set for life." Like, essentially, that there's some promise of a social safety net that now exists in our country if you get the college degree that perhaps, because of the economic crisis, is wearing away a bit.
Yeah, and it's got to be, it's certainly frustrating to see a few decades ahead where I think a lot of what would normally have been seen as a safe white-collar job is actually probably going to be replaced in many ways by technology. Those jobs are going to get a lot harder to get, the ones that would have sort of been guaranteed, where it's like, oh, you've got a history degree. All right, that's fine. You'll have this comfortable white-collar job. And those are shrinking. And one of the areas that actually Mike Rowe recently testified before Congress about that we're in dire need of is skilled labor. And unfortunately, vocational schools don't get any love. But we're always going to need electricians. We're always going to need plumbers. And apparently there is not nearly enough supply to meet the demand already.
But quickly mention here, are we going to see more people being educated through remote technology or online universities?
And I love a lot of things like Khan Academy. I love the fact that MIT has pretty much opened up every one of their classes in podcasts and made it freely available online. It raises an interesting question where if technology makes so much of this knowledge, so much of this learning more accessible, what happens to those thousands of students that say Harvard doesn't admit, but who are Harvard quality? If Harvard could take all of those students, this is part of Thiel's thesis, if they could take all those students, how much would the value of going to Harvard decrease? And it's an interesting question.
Yeah.
However, unlike, let's say, houses or tulips, you can't really flip an education. And so that's the one nuance to this bubble that makes it different from, I think, a lot of the ones he compares it to.
But if we go with that, like you said, you wouldn't have met your co-founders at Reddit if you hadn't gone to school. But meantime, we got a lot of feedback from viewers on Twitter, on Facebook. People feel really strongly about this.